This is Democracy Watch. Mark, that was a fire in a Dropbox in Vancouver, Washington, in a close district. There was also a fire set in Portland, Oregon Dropboxes. First off, what's the remedy in terms of making sure that these ballots are actually counted? Like, we don't know how many ballots were inside of the Vancouver Dropbox, for example, but there may have been hundreds.
Yeah, so first of all, this is an absolute assault on democracy, and no one should view it as anything less than that. You know, Republicans have been demonizing Dropboxes now for years. Donald Trump has been demonizing Dropboxes for years. And while we'll wait for the police to say definitively what's behind this, I think it's pretty clear that this is what happens when you get irresponsible rhetoric from people who are supposed to be responsible. But you know, to answer your question directly, the fact is that where a ballot is damaged or destroyed, obviously it can't be counted. So it is very, very important that any voter who believes they dropped off their ballot in the days leading up to this, they should check with the county election officials, and they'll be able to tell you whether or not your ballot was received or whether your ballot was not. And if not, you'll be provided an opportunity to cast a new vote. It shouldn't require that in a democracy. We should all be in favor of a free and fair election. But Brian, as you and I have talked about now for the better part of a few years, unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of irresponsible rhetoric coming on the other side.
Do you worry that these attacks might prompt copycat attacks?
You have to be worried about that, right? You have to be worried that already there are copycat attacks. I mean, you have to be worried that the person who did the one in Oregon may have inspired one in Washington, or vice versa. It could be the same person, could be different people. But you know, it's not just copycat attacks. You know, in 2022, you and I talked about the fact that there were armed election vigilante outside of Dropboxes in Maricopa County, you know, videotaping people. And we talked on earlier episodes about how the Republican Party went to court to try to strike down laws that prevent the harassment or intimidation of people casting ballots at Dropboxes. Now, this is obviously at a whole other level. I don't want to equate the two because this is quite a serious crime, but. Of course, we have to worry that when people see the demonization of voting, when people hear the kind of rhetoric we have heard about Dropboxes, that it will inspire bad actions, and that when people then see these bad acts, that you could have other people engage in them. But people should not lose sight of the fact that voting by Dropbox is still a very secure way of voting. And everyone who wants to return their ballot by Dropbox should absolutely do so with confidence, notwithstanding these isolated efforts to intimidate people.
Mark, what can and what should localities be doing to ensure that their Dropboxes are safe?
Look, the first thing is Dropboxes are safe, right? They are secure metal containers. And in fact, the one in Oregon seemed to have been equipped with some type of safety device.
Fire retardant, yeah.
Yeah, to actually put out the fire. So people should have a lot of confidence that their Dropboxes are safe. But it is incumbent on election officials around the country, really, to make sure that they do everything they can to make sure that people who want to vote can do so safely. And I think that that's what's happening. I mean, already we've had tens of millions of votes cast, and the overwhelming majority of them have been without incident. But I think that it is incumbent on the counties to make sure they are doing everything possible. But it is probably most important, in my mind, with respect to these incidents, for law enforcement to promptly investigate these and do everything they can to ensure that anyone who's involved in this kind of criminal activity is brought to justice.
Right, I think that's the especially interesting part, because you have people like Ron DeSantis who find people who vote thinking that they have the full right to do so, and yet he'll lay down the hammer on them, and yet all of these supposed purported self-proclaimed election integrity champions are completely silent in the face of actual attacks against democracy, because, of course, Dropboxes, ballots that go into Dropboxes in blue areas are most likely going to favor Democrats. And so it's silence from the Ron DeSantis faction of people out there who are these, again, purported self-proclaimed champions for election integrity.
Yeah, and you make a really important point, because we oftentimes when we talk about whether it's Ron DeSantis in Florida or Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, or some of these crazy election denier lawsuits, one of the questions you sometimes ask me is like, what possible law are they even alleging here? What is the thing they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, or they're criminalizing or trying to create something that doesn't exist. Here you have clear criminal conduct. I mean, you have clear criminal conduct. You have charges that range from possession of destruction devices to manufacture of destruction devices, unlawful use of a weapon, potentially arson, reckless burning, criminal mischief, obstruction of justice, at the state level and potentially at the federal level, illegal acts relating to voting machines. Again, state level, federal level. You could have criminal conspiracy charges, right? You have clear crimes, but where is Ron DeSantis in speaking out against this? Where is the Republican Party as it manufactures hate around all kinds of made up things? Where is it in saying we don't tolerate this kind of hate? And so it's very, very disturbing to see the misapplication of the criminal laws when we see that, but we should be speaking out clearly, and all of a sudden Republican voices have gone silent when we see actual clear evidence of criminal activity that is aimed at the heart of democracy.
Right. These are the same people claiming that 5 million undocumented immigrants voted in the last election with zero proof whatsoever, and yet we have a clear-cut crime right here, and it's, again, complete silence from these people who beat their chests as these champions of voter integrity.
Right.
Marc,
and by the way, remember, we were talking not that long ago about the fact that in the state of Georgia, they did a massive effort to try to uncover illegal voting by non-citizens. And what they came up with is 9 incidents that they say over the last several elections involve people voting who are not U.S. citizens. Let's assume all 9 of those hold up. Well, here you have the destruction of likely dozens or hundreds of ballots.
Right.
And yet, I haven't heard those same people trumpeting that those 9 incidents of alleged illegal voters in Georgia. I haven't heard any of those people talk about this.
Right, perfectly put. The Dropbox in Vancouver, Washington, likely, to your point, did have either dozens or hundreds of ballots inside because the last pickup was Saturday morning and the fire was set on Monday morning. I'm assuming that you would recommend more frequent pickups just as a very simple, easy to introduce solution to potential problems like this?
Absolutely. Look, that is good election administration anyway, right? I mean, you want to have frequent pickups of ballots, both to prevent the kind of criminal conduct we've seen here having an impact, also to prevent these ballot drop boxes from getting too full, also because it aids in the orderly processing of ballots, right? The more often you pick them up, the quicker you can process them to have vote totals. So I don't want to second guess the election officials in Washington or Oregon, but certainly in light of this and with the other delays that we see in the U.S. Postal Service, where more people may be using ballot drop boxes, I think it is vitally important that they increase the pickup schedule at these drop boxes and in drop boxes around the country. It also, by the way, puts more eyes on these drop boxes from election officials, right? Because they're going to them more frequently. So I absolutely would encourage that.
And finally, let's finish off with this. And you did allude to this earlier in one of your previous answers, but what is your message more broadly to Americans who might look at this and say, look, I don't know where to submit my ballot. We have the USPS that might be late because of Louis DeJoy. We have these drop boxes where fires are being set. So what's your message to voters in light of what's happening right now to reassure them that their ballots will be safe?
Yeah, so look, tens of millions of voters have voted without incident. We are already having success stories around the country in people voting early, people voting by mail. And yes, we are seeing isolated incidents where either through criminal activity like this or through the Republican National Committee in court of trying to target ballots to prevent them from being counted. And these criminal acts, I have every confidence to believe will be prosecuted, and people who are affected by them will be able to cast a new ballot and be remedied. The Republican National Committee that's brought litigation, they are losing in case after case after case. They lost another round of cases this morning as we're recording this. They're searching America for a courthouse where they can register a win. So your right to vote is being protected. Your right to vote is being protected in court. Your right to vote is going to be protected by the police and by election officials in these drop boxes. And it is the bad actors and the vote suppressors who want you not to vote. It is the bad actors and the vote suppressors who want you to believe that using drop boxes are not safe, that that nothing you can do will make sure that your vote counts, and ignore them. If you want to vote by drop box, by all means, use a Dropbox. It's a secure metal container, and your vote will count. If you want to vote in person because you prefer to do that, fine, vote in person. But most important is make a plan and make sure you vote, because the cynics and the vote suppressors want you to give up. But I'm here to tell you, you can't give up. The election is too important.
Right. Do not reward the people seeking to undermine this election by giving them exactly what they want, which is your fear preventing you from casting your ballot. You did allude to the fact that we are winning cases in the courts right now. That is in large part thanks to you and your team. So for folks watching right now, to support the invaluable work that Marc and his team are doing in the courts, which is ground zero for this election litigation, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting in elections. It's also going to be an excellent resource in terms of finding out what's happening in the courts right now as soon as it does break. So I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.